Today on episode number 427 of the School of Podcasting's morning announcements, we got a couple updates from Apple. We've got a podcast rewind. We're going to talk with the inventor of the Simple Podcast Press WordPress plugin. It's actually pretty cool. And speaking of cool tools, I've got some cool tools for you to help grow your email list through your podcast. We've also got a last 5 and 5. And recently, I wrote an article on podcasternews.com that's got a lot of people talking. So today, I'm going to kind of review my article on is podcast review swapping hurting podcasting. Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you so much for tuning in. I know your day is busy. I know you got a lot of things you could be listening to. And the fact that you are now listening to me, wow, I am just honored to have me in your ears. Is that the right way of saying that? Our website is schoolofpodcasting.com, where you can find step-by-step tutorials as well as little old me to help you start your podcast. And I'm going to play with a little tool here. You ready for this? I'll tell you how I did this in a second. But if you text podcast to 38470. That's right. Open up your phone, type the word podcast to that number is 38470. You will receive a coupon for the School of Podcasting. And later in the episode, I will tell you how to do that. Now, if you're new to the show, we talk about all things podcasting here, from planning to promoting to gear to promotion. And today we're going to talk about some cool tools as well as maybe some gray areas of podcasting promotion. And again, I thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to join in on the conversation, you can go over to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact and join on in. And we got some late breaking news. Apple basically now is saying that your album art, this is the artwork that is used in the iTunes store, is now basically the size of your head. They've released a new spec, and they say now, right now as we speak here, most people's album art, if they know what they're doing, is 1400 by 1400. And if that's you, you're actually still good. If you want to, you can blow it up now to 2048 by 2048. That is huge. And like I said, it's basically the size of your head. They're also saying, for the most part, make it a JPEG. Make it a JPEG. And if you are going to use a PNG, first things first, make it a JPEG. What's wrong with you? But if you are going to use a PNG, because that's the way I roll, then it needs to be red, green, and blue color model only. So, but in general, how about making it a JPEG? And so that's going to be interesting as we roll along. It's not a huge deal, but that is something that you need to get your graphic person to do this. Now, if you want to try to do it yourself, you can go to Pixlr, pixlr.com, and go in and adjust you can resize it. But many times when you do this, it's going to make it pixelate, so you might have to redo your album artwork. And I'm actually thinking of just having mine redone. I redid my album art a while ago, and maybe I'll just come up with some new stuff. But keep that in mind. That is something moving ahead that we're going to need to update.
In case you missed it, it's time for a podcast rewind.
All right, in this podcast rewind, since the last time we talked, we've had I appeared on two shows. One is internet marketing. Welcome to internet marketing. Been listening to this show forever by Site Visibility, and Andy White, better known as Dr. Pod back in the day, was on that show and talking about podcasting, where it's come from, where it's going. And again, I'll put a link to this out in the show notes at schoolofpodcasting.com/427.
Do you still get people coming to you and saying, Dave, how do I make money directly from my podcast? And if you do, what do you say to them?
Well, I usually tell them it can be done, but most people don't make money from the actual sale of let's say it's an MP3 file. The people that do that have been doing it for years. Mark Maron is one. He sells his back catalog because he has 400 shows or something like that. So there are a few people that have a large back catalog. There's a comedy podcast called Keith and the Girl. I think they're up to 1,000 episodes now because they do it for 5 days a week.
Yeah. And
they will sell their back catalog. But in most cases, most people are not making money directly selling the actual content. And I usually recommend people don't do that when they start out because a lot of people forget when you first start out, you don't have an audience. So when you start out and let's say you're making a free episode and one for people to pay for. Well, if you don't have an audience, you're doing double the work for no pay. And that usually leads to burnout.
Yeah.
I was also on the Gary Leland show. And Gary is, you've probably heard that name. He's a big softball guy. He's one of the guys behind Podcast Movement. And he started a show because Gary wants to sell physical stuff, not digital stuff, physical stuff. And so we talked about how podcasting can be used to help grow that kind of business.
Someone's wanting to get into podcasting because we want to sell stuff. That's what we're talking about here, selling stuff. And how would they start? Where should they go? Besides your site, what's the first thing they need to do? The second thing they need to do? Let's kind of go through the steps of getting them set up.
Well, you want to look at who your audience is, who uses your product, and figure out what those people want to hear. So let's say maybe I make antiperspirant, right? Well, I got to figure out what audience sweats because they need my product, right? And so it might be people that are into extreme sports or things of that nature. So you might consider doing an extreme sports show, and then you could almost use your product almost like the built-in sponsor. Hey, if you're sweating when you're bungee jumping, check out this product. That could be an example, but you really need to start with your audience and what do they want to hear? What's going to inspire them? What's going to entertain them or somehow it's going to impact them because in the end, it always comes down to your audience. So that would be step number one. Again, I'll have links to these out in the show notes, schoolofpodcasting.com/427. One of the great things about Podcast Movement is they had a really cool list of vendors there that actually had tools that I went, wow, I would probably use that. And in this case, I am. And that tool is Simple Podcast Press. And right now, we're going to listen to an interview with Hanny this is a guy that made it. And you'll hear where I was really thinking about you when I was interviewing this person in terms of okay, does it do this? Does it do that? I need to ask this for that. I need to ask this for that. And make sure, because in many cases, yes, it does things like if I never had a website and I'd been using Libsyn all along, it can take all those episodes and put them on my WordPress site. But that, for most of us, may not be the typical situation. And so we get into the situation like yours and mine. And so here is my interview with Hanny from Simple Podcast Press. And I'm here with Hanny from Simple Podcast Press. Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks, Dave. My pleasure.
I said at the beginning of the year, I think this year podcasting, because it's getting bigger and bigger, I think we're going to start seeing services that are specifically designed for podcasters to take things that we're already doing and maybe just tweak them a bit to where they're more fun, more cool, and more effective. Hence, Simple Podcast Press. So tell us what it is, what it does, your typical spiel.
Okay. So the typical spiel is Simple Podcast Press will automatically publish your podcast onto your website, and it's going to help you grow your email list and help you grow the number of listeners.
Okay.
Now, that sounds like a big feat. So the idea here is podcasters tend to there's two ways of kind of producing your podcast. There's people who self-host their own podcast and people who use third-party services. So this plugin is designed to work with both and offer value for both types of people. But the main design was to help people who are just starting with podcasting, who are getting a feed generated somewhere, like Libsyn, for example, is a great place. They host their media and their feed there. And they're thinking of starting a website, which is always a great thing to do, but they don't know how to get the podcast onto their website easily. So this will automatically, every time you publish a new podcast episode through your Libsyn onto your iTunes, it will automatically add them to your WordPress site.
So that's for somebody who's been using Libsyn
as their host and their website, but they've decided now I want my own website. How do I get all those episodes over to my WordPress?
Exactly. It does it automatically. And going forward, every time you publish a new podcast through Libsyn, it's going to show up automatically on your WordPress site. Now, the advantage is it's also got it's pretty slick looking audio player, which
Right.
is very mobile friendly, so it looks great on mobile sites, but it's also good in the sense that it gives you the option to add buttons so people can subscribe on other channels like Stitcher, SoundCloud. Makes it easy for people to subscribe to grow the audience that way.
Right.
Also gives you the option to add an email opt-in box, which is very important.
Yeah, and so however you want people to subscribe, whether it's Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, or email. And this is at the bottom of every player then.
Every player, even if you had 600 episodes published, it's going to update the player on all 600 episodes in the past and everything going forward as well.
Now, let's go the opposite direction. Somebody like me, I've got 400 episodes. How do I don't need to move my posts, they're already there. How does it work in that case? I'm using PowerPress.
Awesome. That's a great question. That's a question I get a lot because PowerPress is an amazing plugin. It generates your feed for you.
Right.
Now, what this does, the automatic import obviously is not required.
Right.
You already have it on your WordPress site. What this does is with a click of a button, you can automatically replace every single audio player on your existing blog posts with the new simple Podcast Press player, one that's mobile friendly, and you get all the benefits of having the subscribe buttons and also the benefits of having the email subscribe button. So the opt-in box below every player, every single previously published and every single future published episode. And you don't have to change your workflow. So you keep the Blueberry. It's designed to work with your Blueberry. It's not a replacement. You still need that Blueberry. It's an amazing plugin.
Right.
It works with it, and it does not interfere with your feed, but it does give you the option, if you like, to replace that player with a different kind of player.
I know in my case, my show notes can get kind of long, and with the PowerPress plugin, I can, via shortcode, put a player at the top and then one at the bottom. Can I have more than one player?
Yes, you can, actually. Okay. By default, it will put it where your PowerPress player was. And if you have the PowerPress shortcode, it will switch out the shortcode with the simple Podcast Press shortcode. So it can be done automatically. If all your posts had 2 players, it will automatically show you 2 players. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. What if for some reason I put this on my website and I don't like it? What happens then?
Great question. You can simply change the player back to PowerPress. Through the simple Podcast Press, you choose the audio player you want, so you can simply say, take me back to PowerPress. I want to go back to my PowerPress. You save the settings and everything goes back to normal.
That's pretty interesting. And the one thing that when I was playing with it that I didn't expect, but was just a nice little icing on the cake, is I logged into my dashboard. And is that from just one store, or is that from all stores? Basically, I saw my iTunes reviews.
Yes, that's one frustration a lot of podcasters have is they want to know what people are saying all around the world. Right? You might be in a U.S.-based podcast, but people in Canada, people all over the world are leaving reviews and comments. So this will curate all the reviews from all the countries in iTunes. So it's only specific to iTunes.
Right.
It's every single country. And it will sort them by the most recent. Top 5 are showing up on your WordPress dashboard. You can click a button and go in and see all your reviews as well. But it's
awesome.
More licenses.
Any things in the future that you might add to it, or because right now it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. It's meant to be, besides the basic functionality, it's meant to be like a little toolbox. So we added simple tweeting, for example. You can highlight a quote while you're editing a post. Click a button. And when you view that post, it's going to look like a quote with a button that says tweet this. And when you click, and it will tweet. Now, not only will it tweet, it will also shorten your URL so that Twitter is limited, obviously. Right. So it shortens it automatically based on the episode number in your title. So it figures out the episode number if you use episode numbers in your titles, and it will use that as the shortened URL.
Well, and speaking of shortened URLs, that's another feature that it can do. So if you publish an episode, well, tell us, how does that set up?
Yeah, it's set up to automatically detect, by default, you automatically detect, based on the title, if you have a number in your title, an episode number, it will detect it, let's say my website is simplepodcastpress.com. I can have it so that every time I make a new post, it will be simplepodcastpress.com/the episode number it detected. Now, if I don't like it, I want to customize it, you can go in and edit that short URL inside the blog post itself and put whatever you want in there.
Okay, now if somebody's using, like I use Pretty Link, is that going to cause a conflict of any sort?
It seems like we've done testing with Pretty Link, and it seems to be the default choice.
Okay.
But we did add an option in the latest build so that you could turn off the shortening on the simple podcast press, because it's not going to work for everyone.
Right.
So we made the option to turn off the shortener.
Very cool.
And just use whatever shortener you're currently using.
Awesome.
And there you have it. And the great thing about this is he is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, if you just have one website, it's $37. And if you have, for 3 websites, you can get it for $97. And then if you wanted to put it on every website, you can. That is $197. There is an affiliate program for this. So if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/simplepodcastpress, again, schoolofpodcasting.com/simplepodcastpress, you can actually get this tool and I'll earn a small commission. So it's a 2 for the price of 1. You'll help out Hanny and you'll help out me. But I am using it. It's a cool tool. And I'm going to kind of continue on here with some cool tools. Since when I was thinking about this episode, I'm like, there's some things I'm playing with. And these are not 100% podcasting related, but one of the tools that is in the Simple Podcast Press is the ability to make easy to remember links. And so what if you wanted to have, like at the beginning of the show, I said, if you text the word podcast to 38470, you'll get a coupon. And if you want to know how I'm doing it, it's through a company called Call Loop. And if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/call loop, so yes, that is 3 L's in a row, that will take you right over there. And what's interesting about this platform is that you can get a free plan. You spend $10 a month for the word. So in my case, I'm spending $10 for the word podcast. And their pricing goes free, and it's 5 cents per text. And then basically, again, it's $10 a month for the keyword. And what this basically is, what Call Loop is, in the same way that you can have an email list, you can have basically a text list, an SMS list that you can send people messages like, hey, new episode of School of Podcasting is out, and put a link. Now, from what I understand, people that receive text messages read them as opposed to email, and they're more likely to click on it. And 64% of all podcasts now are listened on a mobile device, per Rob over at Libsyn.com. And so the fact that you can try it for free, I'm like, all right, I'll try it for free. And then I went and bought a keyword. So it wasn't free. It's $10 a month. But I'll spend 5 cents to have somebody come listen to my show. Why not? So I'm giving that a shot. Now, another one that then tweaked my curiosity. I'm like, well, what else is out here? If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/join by text. So again, schoolofpodcasting.com/join by text. This is $19 a month, a little more expensive, but as they say, the money is in the list. And what this would do is if you were to, again, text the word podcast to, in this case, 66866, that's 66866, send the word podcast, you will instantly be asked to subscribe to my email list. And in the future, the show notes would be emailed to you. So it's a different aspect. One is you're getting people to subscribe to what amounts to be your SMS, your texting list. And then this one makes it super easy for people to sign up for your email list. So I thought I would throw these in here today because we're kind of talking about cool tools for your website, cool tools for growing your audience, for having people get signed up for email lists and things like that. If you like this kind of stuff, check out my podcast, Weekly Web Tools. You can find that over at weeklywebtools.com.
And now it's time for a last 5 and 5. What were the last 5 podcasts you listened to?
We are still on the noisy floor at Podcast Movement. It's the last day. We're all brain dead, and I'm walking around giving people pop quizzes. And I'm here with Tommy G. Kendrick. Where can we find your podcast?
Yeah, it's actorstalkpodcast.com, Dave.
And I almost don't need to ask this, but tell us about your podcast.
Well, it's a podcast for actors, about actors, by an actor. That's me. I've been an actor for about 40 years. Joined SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Unions, back in '78, so I have a lot of experience, and I try to impart some of the hard knocks that I learned along the way, so that the guys coming up behind me maybe don't have to make all the mistakes that I did.
Awesome. Well, tell us about the last 5 podcasts you listened to.
I love it. Found out one here. It's called Creative, The Unmistakable Creative, which is a really interesting looking artwork. Podcast 411 inside the Podcaster Studio. School of Podcasting, which is my go-to podcast, and Podcasters Roundtable. Is that 5 or is that 4? And then This Is Your Life, the Michael Hyatt podcast. There you go.
Do you like his new format?
Well, you know what? I just started listening,
Oh, there you go.
so I don't know.
Don't know
I
the
don't
old
know
format.
from old.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And again, where can people find your stuff?
At actorstalkpodcast.com.
Awesome. Thank you, my
Dave.
man.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tommy. It was great meeting Tommy at Podcast Movement. And Tommy is a regular in the chat room every Saturday when I do the Ask the Podcast Coach show. I always see Tommy in the chat room. It's always great to see him. Great to shake the hand and put a face with the name. And if you go over to his website, Actors Talk Podcast, what will you see there? Yeah, you guessed it, Simple Podcast Press. So he's already in on it. So thank you so much, Tommy, for sharing your last 5 and 5. If you have one, you can just simply go out to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact, click on the button and record yours there, or just record it yourself and email it. Again, all the info is at schoolofpodcasting.com/contact. Thanks, Tommy.
Dave pops a cork in 5, 4, 3, 2.
All right, I've got a question for you, and you may not even know this is going on, but that is, I wrote an article over at podcasternews.com. That's podcasternews.com. And the title of the article is Swapping Reviews Hurting Podcasting? Now, let me explain what's going on. If you go to any kind of like social media site, like Reddit or Facebook groups, or certain establishments that teach people how to podcast that are not the School of Podcasting, people are going, hey, let's all get together and I'll give you a 5-star review and you can give me a 5-star review. And on one hand, you kind of go, wow, that's cool. Why didn't I think of that? And I get that. And because when you get a bunch of people doing it and they're all like, yeah, let's do it. Hey, because everybody's doing it, man, it must be okay. After all, the ends, hey, I get more reviews. I'm going to push myself up in iTunes. The ends justify the means. And if you can just kind of bear with me for a minute, I'm going to tell you why I think this is a wrong idea to do. It's a bad strategy. Now, for the record, this is my opinion, but I'm going to explain where I get my opinion from, and then you can decide. All right. So if you're new to the show, I play the guitar, and I've played in bands since I was little, before I could barely drive, basically. And I'm old now, which means I've been doing it a long time. And the last band that was really successful that I was in, really successful meaning we played all over the place in Ohio. I've never had I've never wanted to be a rock star. Let's go that route. I mean, you want to, but I had realistic goals. And maybe we'll talk about that someday with podcasting, realistic podcasting goals. But I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and there was a club that was like the blues club. And this was a blues band, and it was called Fat Fish Blue. And I'm like, man, someday I want to start a band and someday I'm going to play Fat Fish Blue. And so I got a bunch of guys together. It was one of the best bands I've ever been in, one of the best group of guys I've ever been in. And we recorded a demo. And we could have gone right to Fat Fish Blue right there. Like 6 months, we get together, record a demo, boom, here, Fat Fish Blue, we want to play you. But we kind of knew that as we played more together, we were going to gel as a band. We were going to find our voice. And to give you a detail, it's not in the article, after 3 years, we added a horn section and we kind of changed our format a bit. And it was like, wow, we went from being a good band to like, wow, this is like something you can't find in Northeast Ohio. The other thing we did is when we went on break, I went into the audience along with the other guys and we made really strong relationships with the people that were listening to us. I wrote down and I would take pictures of people and I would put their picture on our Facebook with their permission and I would write down their name. Now, why did I do that? Because I wanted to know their name. And the next time they came in, I'd be like, hey, Jill, Tony, hey, what's going on, Bacon? Right? Hey, Steve, what's going on? It was awesome. And it really built this huge connection. And one of the things I got to tell you is with Fat Fish Blue, everybody wanted to play Fat Fish Blue. And you know what? We waited and we gelled as a band. And after 3 years, we were like a well-oiled machine. We made the cover of the Akron Beacon Journal. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. And when I opened up the entertainment section, and there I am playing because I was headlining a giant festival in Akron, that was pretty cool. We opened for national touring bands. Some of them were horrible. Like my blues band opened up for Blue Oyster Cult, and we got booed off the stage because we don't play heavy metal. It was a great experience. And but we waited, and we recorded a new demo with the new horn section. And we submitted that to Fat Fish Blue. And I'm so glad that we waited. Why? Because you only really got one shot with Fat Fish Blue. And you're like, great, Dave, wonderful story. What does this have to do with podcasting? You only get one shot with your audience. Why would I go back and listen again if the first time I heard you were awful? What if I gave you 2 listens and it's just the same old ripoff of somebody else that there's no originality, there's nothing? No, for the most time, I don't go back and listen. If I listen to a podcast and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't for me, wasn't bad, I'm not your target audience, whatever it is, it's not, it's not you, it's me, and I don't listen. So here's the thing to keep in mind. When you first start your podcast, you may have room for improvement. This is episode number 427, and you know what I feel about this podcast? I think there's room for improvement. But when you first start out, you may not have found your voice. You may need to polish some things. You are missing what we consider maybe icing on the cake. And if you think about it, a cupcake without icing is a really bland muffin. And so now, does this mean, Dave, when I put out a show, I shouldn't submit my stuff to iTunes and tell people about it? No, by all means, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is putting yourself at the front of the line may not be a great idea. Think about this. Think about all the American Idol winners. How many can you name besides Carrie Underwood, Kelly Clarkson? Yeah, okay. You know, there may be 3 winners who have had extended careers. A lot of the people that have careers didn't win it. Jennifer Hudson, Chris Daughtry, he didn't win. Now, why is there such a small number of actual winners that aren't like, why aren't they just like, why don't I look at the top of the charts and just see American Idol, American Idol, American Idol, American Idol? because they were pushed to the front of the line without the development that comes through time. They haven't established that fan base by going to gig after gig after gig, by establishing that relationship with their audience. And I don't know about you, but I haven't heard much from the David Cook camp these days. Have you? And what we're talking about here is not submitting your stuff and not asking for people to review you in iTunes. What we're talking about is artificially inflating your iTunes rankings. And when you do this, you're doing the same thing as American Idol. You're putting yourself at the front of the line when you don't have the talent to keep them. Your podcasting fame is going to be over before you can say Taylor Hicks. Now, I want to give a shout out to Ryan K. Parker, who answered while he was on vacation in Mexico. I said, what was that one quote we were talking about the one time? You can find him over at foodcraftsman.com. And I love this quote. Good marketing only allows people to find out you have a poor product faster. We can't remember who said it, but for now, we're going to say Ryan said it. And he's going to say, no, somebody else. We can't remember. But good marketing only allows people to find out you have a poor product faster. And so when you get into new and noteworthy, and that's really what people talk about. They talk about it per nauseum. Like, this is the holy grail. If I can just get into new and noteworthy, then I'll be making six figures in about 6 months. And it just doesn't happen that way. In fact, what may happen is when you push yourself to new and noteworthy prematurely, that may be the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Because people find you, they hear your inexperience, they hear the lack of confidence and the lack of organization, they hear the poor microphone choice because you sound like this. Wait a minute, let me do this. Okay, so here I am, and I'm doing the podcast now, and you sound like you're in a wind tunnel, or you sound like you're in a cave. Maybe you hit the reverb button because you thought it sounded cool. They hear the utter lack of originality in some cases, and they tune out because you're doing podcasting by copying somebody else, and you've left out the you, and that's the part that we really need is the you part. And what happens is they hear your show, and later when somebody asks if they've ever heard your show, they go, yeah, it sucked. And thanks to your hustle to get your podcast to the front of the line, you've let more and more people know that your show really isn't ready to be at the front of the line, like an American Idol. And remember this, as much as we want word of mouth works both ways. People will go, man, you got to hear this show. That is word of mouth. Remember, word of mouth also works both ways. So when somebody hears a really bad podcast and somebody goes, hey, do you know any good WordPress podcasts? And they go, well, I can tell you what one not to listen to. Right? I love WordPress plugins A to Z, but don't listen to the, Binky and the Wiz show, because they're awful.
They've been kicked off every major and minor market in radio. Now they've come to conquer podcasting. Keep your arms and hands inside the ride. It's time for the Binky and the Wiz show.
So now when I say to you, hey, word of mouth works both ways, there are people that are literally saying this. Are you ready for this? They go, that's all right. I'll just change the name of my show and I'll resubmit again and I'll buy enough reviews to push me back to the front of the line of new and noteworthy. Think about that. That's all right. I'll change the name of my show. I'll somehow change my feed. Maybe I'll build a new website. I'll put all the old episodes in and maybe I'll retag them and I'll just buy my way back to the front of the line. How about taking all that effort and putting it into content that will actually impact your audience? How about creating some content that actually moves people to want to review you, to want to give you some reviews? Now, most of you, if you're a millennial, you will not remember this. So let me tell you about it. Gather around, children. Back in the day, there's a really old commercial with a guy who almost sounded like this. What was his name? It was from a guy named John Houseman. He was kind of this grumpy old man, kind of like me right now. And they would say, Smith Barney, we make money the old-fashioned way. We earn it. And I say the best practice in the key point here, long run, is to earn your podcast reviews. So again, hang with me a little bit. I'm going to go left to center, but let's look at radio for a second. Now, I wasn't around in the 50s. I'm not that old. But, books and movies that I've read and watched make it sound like the listeners were drawn to the personalities, the Wolfman Jacks of the world. Now, when you fast forward 65 years and radio has no personality, and for the most part, radio is losing listeners. We just lost a rock station here in Cleveland. They was replaced with, you guessed it, sports. Because that's the one thing sports have is live broadcast. And people are really passionate here about sports because we stink. And we love to talk about how much we stink in sports. But the one thing is, once you start listening to podcasts, answer this question. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com/427. Because obviously you listen to podcasts. Do you listen to the radio anymore? There is, once you start listening to podcasts, you don't go back to radio. The only thing I listen to on the radio is Jay Moore Sports, and I listen live. In reality, I could pick that up as a podcast, and now that I think about that, I probably will, because it's on a really weak AM radio station. I like Jay Moore. He's funny. Back in the day, people would gather in their living rooms to listen. Now, granted, there was nothing else to do. It's like, well, should we listen to the radio or watch the paint dry? I guess we'll listen to the radio, but radio had everyone's attention. And the radio industry was mesmerized by the connection that the DJ had with their audience. They were amazed at the emotions that musicians evoked in their fans. This is back in the day when rock and roll was early, and people would just drop like a bag of potatoes. They would just faint when they saw these people because of the connection they had. So what did they do? You had this thing that had everybody's attention, and they pushed more and more advertising into the airwaves. They watered down the product. And of course, hey, what's wrong with a little more advertising? Everybody's doing it. Sound familiar? And so they had more and more advertising. They focused on profit, and it became less about music and much, 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 much more about the business. And creativity was squelched, and musicians who don't fit a certain mold never stood a chance of being heard. Artists like Bruce Springsteen, there are plenty of people that grew their audience over time, would have never made the light of day now because, hey, I'm sorry, your first 2 albums didn't sell, you're done. First one. So all of this has been done in the name of money. And, a lot of people now are doing this because they want to make money with their podcast. Now, let me take this back a second. Let's back that up a second. Their sole reason for getting into podcasting is to make money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money with your podcast. When you lose your job and you start a podcast because I need to make money now, that's a problem. And what has happened now is by taking radio and solely focusing on money and efficiency, there is no personality now in radio. And the personalities of radio have 20 seconds to put the personality into a show. We'll be talking about that in the future. I'm going to do an episode on what people can learn from radio because the DJs are very talented, very creative people who love music, and they're completely shackled. So what has happened? Radio was put on life support with no doctors in sight, no cures in sight. And look, I live in what is called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city. Cleveland, Ohio, has the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or as I call it, an overpriced hard rock cafe. And most of the, quote, rock stations here are unlistenable. If I have to hear 2 Tickets to Paradise or You Shook Me All Night Long one more time, that's it. I'm going to find the nearest bridge and do a swan dive. The platform, and this is the point, the platform has lost a large chunk of its power and a large chunk, keyword here, of its influence. I'm not listening to radio, are you? Why? Because they watered it down in pursuit of profit. And this is what a lot of these people that are doing this promo swapping, or in some cases, they're going out to sites like Fiverr, and they're just buying their way to the top. Now, what does this have to do with new and noteworthy, Dave? All right, let's bring it back. You ready? Because when you join a forum and everyone agrees to write glowing reviews of each other's podcast, it's false advertising. It's false advertising. The people who use New and Noteworthy to find good shows, I refer to them as, listeners. The listeners who go to New and Noteworthy to find good shows are going to find it less useful. Why? Because it's filled with people at the front of the line who shouldn't be there. And so instead of finding engaging content, they find, as the immortal Steve Jobs put it, amateur hour. And New and Noteworthy will lose its integrity. And come on, as a podcaster, if you don't know this, the only thing you have, brothers and sisters, say it with me, is our integrity. I know, it's just my opinion. And I realize not everybody that's at the front of the line of New and Noteworthy, there are people who have earned it. And that doesn't mean that when you just start a podcast, it's not a good show. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying in some cases, when it's underpants on fire and you're just following the formula, maybe not. Maybe a little room for some creativity there. All right, let me give you one other story here. Gather around, children. This is around 2007, and I think I've shared this story before. And there was a website, this is before iTunes. It was called Podcast Alley. It's still around. I don't know that there's much left over there. The forums were taken over by spam. It's kind of like, it's weird. It's like a Scooby-Doo ghost town when you go over there now. But it was the place back in the day to get ranked. In fact, before there was, please rank me in iTunes, it was please vote for me on Podcast Alley. That was the battle cry. But there was this really high-profile internet marketer who was in the movie The Secret, and he used his giant email list to get him from 0 to the number 1 spot. Nobody had ever heard of him. We're like, what? Who's this guy on the top of the charts? We'd never heard of him. So I tuned in, and his podcast was horrible. Again, my opinion. It was all about him and how awesome he was. And this is why you should listen to me, because I've done this. I've cured cancer. I can turn dog poop into gold. Listen to my podcast. It was amazing. The problem was there was zero value for me. It was awful. And it was so obvious to me. I was really surprised because as a marketer, this wasn't a very good message. There was no value for his audience. And the next week, he fell completely off the charts because he had blown his one chance. He got his audience to vote for him. And then next week, they're like, well, I've already voted. So, they don't want to, he's kind of bugging his audience or whatever. But just to be clear, he went from number 1 to completely off the charts. He didn't go to like number 20. He just went, what? It was weird. And if he had waited and figured out what his audience needed, if he had made a good show, he might still be at the top of the charts. But instead, he fell off the podcasting planet. So when you spend money and you promise reciprocal reviews or whatever you're using to compensate for reviews in iTunes, you're doing yourself and podcasting, I feel, a disservice. And just because everybody's doing it, I don't think it's okay. Now, I'm not talking about, hey, if you leave, first things first, keep this in mind. If you make a contest in iTunes, and you say, hey, if you leave a review for me in iTunes, be sure to put your domain name in there, in your name, because you can't do a contest in iTunes, because what if, you say, okay, Jim Mom 36, you've won the free Amazon card, and then you get 7 people that email you and say, hey, I'm Jim Mom 36. Ooh, that's kind of weird. So iTunes is not a great place to have a contest. You need to have them put their contact information so you can contact the winner. I'm not even talking about that, because that's getting your listeners to review you. You're giving them incentive. Okay, I get that. But even then, some might call that great. And I'm just talking about having blatant strangers rate your podcast. There are all sorts of gray areas of this. But here's an important question. So let's say you bribe your way onto New and Noteworthy. You and your little tribe. That exposure lasts for basically 2 months. Now what? In the end, it's your content that keeps people coming back. And yes, podcast promotion gets people to your website, but it's your engaging impacting, entertaining, and valuable content that keeps them coming back. Is your plan to work out the kinks? Like, hey, I'm going to find my voice now that I have an audience. Are you going to do that in front of your now larger audience? That's why bands practice in the basement and then they perform in front of people. You don't go get a bunch of gigs and then practice. So eventually you will come off new and noteworthy. Your downloads will go down and you'll have to build your audience. What are you going to do then? Why not just do it now? And so again, I'm not saying you should never ask for a review on iTunes. And if that's what you're getting out of this, then go back and listen again. Let your audience review you because they are inspired, not some stranger who you're trading reviews with or you're paying a fee for. Earn your reviews so that New and Noteworthy can keep its integrity. And while you may think that, well, I got to do this for me, this is how I'm going to get my podcast to the top of the list. You may think it's best for you. And I, for the record, in the short term, it sure seems like it is because you're getting more downloads. And isn't that the end of the game? Isn't that what you're looking for? But in the long run, you get more people finding that your podcast is, again, in some cases, half-baked. Finding a good podcast, if New and Noteworthy loses its integrity, finding a good podcast is going to be it's going to be like, well, people are going to quit saying, oh, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. That phrase is going to get replaced with, well, it's like trying to find a good podcast. And New and Noteworthy is going to become a joke, and some might say it already is. So as podcasters, we need to think outside of our show. And we need to make sure that podcasting as a whole, that podcasting, the medium, provides value to the audience. Because without our audience, we have nothing. And we need to keep that in mind. So that is my opinion on that. I would love your take on this. Now, if you go over to Podcaster News, I'll put a link. I'll tell you what, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/427, I'll put a link to the article of this. I'm not going to actually repurpose the article. You can actually see me playing Fat Fish Blue on the Podcasters News site. And it was a great gig. And I would love your feedback on this. Before we head out the door here, want to remind you, I do a show with Eric K. Johnson, the podcasttalentcoach.com, and we do a show called Podcast Review Show. So if you already have a podcast and you want some honest feedback, don't ask Mom. Mom's going to tell you it was, awesome. But we break down your content. We break down your website. We look at your flow. We look at your marketing, and you're going to get unbiased feedback. Now, we're going to tell you what you're doing right, but we'll also tell you in a loving, gentle way, maybe some things you might want to tweak. And so it's kind of like getting dual consulting at the same time. We do it live on a Google Hangout, so you get extended exposure on YouTube. You get extended exposure on our website as well. And if you're interested in that, go over to podcastreviewshow.com. But that is going to do it for this episode. If you're like, Dave, I don't even have a podcast yet. Well, guess what? I've got a resource for you, and that is schoolofpodcasting.com. And I'll go ahead and throw this in here again. If you want a coupon, text the word podcast to 38470. I'll be telling you guys next week how that worked or not. But yeah, text podcast to 38470. You'll get a coupon. You can go over to the School of Podcasting. We've got step-by-step tutorials. We've got a live monthly call that we do to kind of just hash out anything you're doing. And of course, you always have email to help with, so you're never alone in your podcasting journey. You've also got a great private Facebook group to bounce ideas off of. It's awesome. And if you're looking to start a podcast, I would love to help you. And again, go over to schoolofpodcasting.com. So until next week, let me remind you to live today like it's your last one. Live tomorrow like it's your first. And don't ever let your problems Bring out your worst. Don't ever take your mind off whatever it is, whatever's your goal. Be true to yourself and follow your soul. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Have a great week. Take care. God bless. Class is dismissed.